Generational curses, the reason that it lasts, the reason that it is so hard to get rid of, the reason that it's cyclical is because the operations of the demonic is reinforced and they're given access by way of altars. I wasn't trying to get into altars, but it's very important. Altars are a point at which two dimensions interact. Altars require physical and spiritual infrastructure. So in order for a demon to perpetuate itself and the dynamic, we have to rewrite the program that allows the demon to operate and perpetuate itself. That is the altar in the material dimension, is your genetics, it's your biology. I'm saying that every generational curse is a hijacked and perverted generational blessing. Spiritual Intelligence for Dummies, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Matt Kim, and as I promised, today we're talking about generational trauma, generational curses, depending on what spiritual community you're a part of. Curses might feel very spooky. However you identify that phrase, generational trauma, generational curses, we're talking about it, okay? This is something that I have a lot of experience with. And when I say experience, look, I think a lot of times, like, anybody these days on social media who has experience with something can claim that. I tend not to listen to those people if they haven't overcome that thing, right? Like, it's like you could tell me all the ins and outs of generational curses because you're still in it, but unless you're going to show me how to overcome it, I really don't have an ear for that. You're just basically venting to me about what prison you're in, right? So we got to be very careful about who we listen to. But with that said, what I want to do for you in this episode is give you some of the keys, right, that I've obtained when plundering hell, right, and overcoming some of the generational curses in my life, break down how these things work. And hopefully I want to give you certain secrets as to, how to sustainably, purposefully, and powerfully overcome generational curses, and walk in the measure of your mandate and calling that God has ordained for you in your life here on the earth. And so let's get into it. Generational curses. Look, it's a big hubbub, right? Different people have different approaches on how to address generational curses. Obviously, if you're in the stream that I run parallel to, deliverance is a huge approach. I love deliverance. I think it's powerful. It's biblical, right? Jesus casted demons out a lot, and so did the apostles. Deliverance is powerful because you're evicting spirits that have no license to operate out of a person, so that they are free to, reinforce, build, renovate the temple of God, which is their heart, their spirit man. But when it comes to generational curses, we have to dismantle the strongholds and altars that exist, not just in the spirit realm, definitely in the spirit realm, but also in your genetics, right? So we're rewriting our genetics. And we're going to talk about all of that. When I say altar, look, altars are I was about to say portal, but that sounds so spooky. Altars are portal's a great way to say it. A portal, a door, right? It's a gateway. It's a point at which two dimensions interact, right? If you think about a door in the natural, it's an entryway, it's a portal between two rooms, right? And so altars behave the same. They're a gateway into another dimension and vice versa. And it has a certain framework that it operates off of and some requirements that it needs. So generational curses, the reason that it lasts, right? The reason that it is so hard to get rid of, the reason that it's cyclical is because it's reinforced, right? The operations of the demonic is reinforced and they're given access by way of altars, right? And so altars require physical and spiritual infrastructure, right? If you look at a door, right, in the natural, a door exists on one side of the room and the other side of the room, right? You can't just have a door on one side of the room and expect to step into the other side. It has to exist in both. And so, in that regard, altars need to exist in both dimensions in order to bridge them together and create an access point of entry, right? So in the natural, if you look at the Bible, they created altars, right? There was an altar in the tabernacle, in the temple. You know, occultists, right? Witches, false prophets, they all had altars, right? They sacrificed on these altars. So those are natural structures, right? They're natural structures, but then you look at Moses's account, right? This is so interesting. I wasn't trying to get into altars, but it's very important. When you read Hebrews, the author of Hebrews describes Moses. He says Moses built the tabernacle according to the design of what he saw in the spirit. Okay? So let me ask you this. If the tabernacle wasn't built yet, right? It's Moses' assignment to build it. So it hasn't been built yet. What did Moses see in the spirit? He saw a design, right? He saw a blueprint. And so he built in the natural according to what he saw in the spirit. So what's fascinating is that there was already an infrastructure that God had revealed to Moses in the realm of the spirit. So what Moses' job was to create that representation in the material dimension so that that could be a connecting point where heaven opens up to the earth, right? So that's a great biblical example wherein spiritual structures exist in both the spirit realm and in the natural realm, and you need that in order to create an access point. So, so those are altars, right? There could be demonic altars. They could be altars of the Lord. But either way, we need structures to facilitate them. Now, let's see. When it comes to generational curses, first of all, we have to understand that at some point, right? At some point, when we sin, we create a dynamic and maybe even a structure. Because here's the thing, dynamics are structural in the realm of the spirit. Dynamics are structural in the realm of the spirit. So whenever you observe a dynamic that repeats itself, that's a pattern, it's actually upheld by a structural reality in the realm of the spirit. And so when we sin, so with generational curses, a lot of times the open door is created by way of participating in sin that creates a dynamic that's replicatable and reinforceable, right? So already you've now created and strengthened an altar and a structure in the realm of the spirit that reveals itself in the form of a dynamic. It's a dynamic, okay? So the open door was made, the sin was committed, and an altar was created in the realm of the spirit. And now, in the natural place, that begins to materialize in the realm of our mind, and it begins to rewrite our biology and our genetics, okay? This is one of the ways, I'm not saying the only way, but it's a very key way that altars are created in the natural dimension to perpetuate a generational sin, is by changing your biology, by changing your genetics according to the dynamic that is produced when we sin. Do you understand? That's why sin is passed down generation after generation. It's biblical. So this is the physical architecture of creating an altar, is that it happens by way of manifesting a spiritual structure, the dynamic, and make it replicatable, repeatable by programming. Because think about it. We operate based off of our programming. We operate based off our mindset, our belief system, based off of our genetics. We humans in this material world, we operate off of a program. And so if you could change the program, you could change how we operate. And so the operation is the dynamic, right? That's the spiritual structure. So in order for a demon to perpetuate itself and the dynamic, we have to create a program or rewrite the program that allows the demon to operate and perpetuate itself. Got it? So that is the altar in the material dimension is your genetics. It's your biology, right? We have learned in recent years that epigenetics is, in other words, it's gene expression. It changes what traits, what potential manifests in our lives, right? If a gene, not every gene is expressed. We might carry certain traits, but if it's not expressed, it doesn't manifest. So epigenetics is all about gene expression, and the demonic cares about your genetics. Demons care about your genetics. So maybe you have a cycle, a dynamic, a generational curse of divorce in your life. We have to recognize, look, I didn't ask for this, but I've inherited a biology, I inherited genetics that unless I do something about it, will reinforce this cycle, will reinforce this dynamic, because the altar has been created already. It's been reinforced and it's been brought to the surface. We have to destroy the altar, right? We have to destroy the altar. So how in the world do we begin doing that? Now, if you haven't watched the last episode on mental health, please do that, because I give you a lot of keys on how to dismantle physiological structures that are created from the spirit realm. So that's a very important thing that you should tap into. So watch the last episode. But beyond that, what is an effective way to dismantle generational curses? I have a key that I want to share with you, okay? One of the most effective ways that I've experienced on how to dismantle generational curses is we need to ask God for a revelation of the generational blessing in our life. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? You know, to be vulnerable, like within my family, within my bloodline, there has been some history of poverty and sabotage when it comes to the realm of business and finances. And at the same time, and this is where it gets interesting, at the same time, when I came into the kingdom, one of the things God revealed to me was that I was called to wealth, a measure of wealth. And it's not just about me. He revealed to me that that is actually my inheritance as it flows within my bloodline. So when God showed me this, the connection that I automatically made, which is so important, and I'm going to back this up biblically, is that this generational curse that I was experiencing, that I was battling with, was riding off of a generational blessing. So what am I saying? I'm saying that every generational curse is a hijacked and perverted generational blessing. I'm going to show you the text. In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve, they sinned. Yes? They sinned against God. They sinned against creation. They sinned against each other. And what happened? God said something very interesting. He said, "Cursed is the ground because of you." Now, we think that God cursed them because they sinned against God. That did not happen. God said that curse is the ground because of you. So what's happening is that God is actually, in his mercy, giving language to Adam and Eve so that they're not confused, they're not disillusioned, but they have clarity. It's a revelation that when they start to see things turning against them and this curse appear in their life, it's because of what they have done, right? He connected the curse to their sin. Curse is the ground because of you. And then he gives language to the parameters of the curse. What does he say? He said, look, you're gonna experience pain in childbirth. You know, the ground that you're called to work is going to, rebel against you. It's going to be that much harder to produce fruit. But do you know what's interesting? The parameters of the curse are directly addressing the original mandate that God gave Adam and Eve before they sinned. Be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth. Right? So what is he saying? He's saying it's going to be that much harder for you to be fruitful and multiply. You're going to feel pain when you bear children. The ground is going to rebel against you. You're going to experience toil from the first time in your life. For the first time in your life, you're going to experience toil. With no grace to work the ground and work your mandate, you're going to experience wasteful labor, toil. So now we see that the first curse that we see in the scriptures was a perversion and a hijacking of their mandate. So in order for you to break a generational curse, you have to partner with the Holy Spirit to restore your generational blessing. To break a generational curse, you have to partner with the Holy Spirit to restore your generational blessing. So let me ask you, what has God assigned? What mandate has He given to your bloodline? Not just you, but to your lineage. What words has he spoken over your father, over your mother, over your grandparents? What is the unique value proposition of your last name, of your bloodline? Right? I think in the West, we think so individualistically. And I'm grateful, that I was raised here and in Korea, that I got to experience kind of an Eastern mindset. Because when you understand this, look, family is extremely important for this reason. And a lot of times we can't break the generational curses because we blame our parents for the curse. And maybe they perpetuated it, maybe. But sometimes, a lot more than we are willing to admit, a lot of times they've contributed a lot to weakening the curse in your life. They really tried really hard. They gave it their best shot. And maybe they fell victim to the dynamic because it was too strong. Maybe they didn't have the grace. Maybe they weren't connected to God. But I could speak from, my life. Man, my parents did so much for us to weaken this generational curse, but that by the time it got to me, I'm curb stomping the serpent, right? I'm curb stomping the serpent. It's done. Let's bring it into finality. Let's restore the blessing of our bloodline. It ends with me. And I can only say that, I can only do that because of the sacrifices of my parents and the sacrifices of my grandparents. I'm standing on their shoulders. Now, that might not be true for you, in which case, don't, force yourself to, say that or acknowledge that reality when it's not real for you. That's fine. But what I'm saying is you have to see yourself no longer as an individual, but as part of a bigger picture, right? If your parents didn't do anything to weaken the generational curse and they perpetuated it, it's only because they're as much of a victim, right? They didn't ask to be dealt the hands that they got dealt, right? In the same way that you didn't ask to, get dealt the hand that you got dealt, the same is true for them. Like, do you feel victimized by being dealt generational curses and terrible, genetic epigenetics? So did they. Have some grace, right? Have some grace. Matter of fact, they might not even have had the Holy Spirit, right? But you do. And so just be grateful, right? Be grateful, because the problem is that, look, when we don't know how to honor and connect to the people that came before us, our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, we are cutting off a part of ourselves as well. Because the reality is, the way that lineage works is that I find my parents and my grandparents living inside of me, in my genetics. That's what it means to inherit traits, to inherit a dynamic, to inherit a blessing, is that what was alive in them is alive in me. And unless I honor the parts of them that are alive in me, I am shutting down the parts of me that actually need to be addressed and need to be touched by the grace of God. And so when it comes to generational curses, unforgiveness will keep you stuck, and it will ensure that you pass on the curse to the next generation that comes after you. So we have to forgive. We have to forgive our parents. We have to forgive our grandparents. We have to forgive our siblings as well. Because when we forgive them, we're accepting who they are as a part of us, and we're acknowledging that I'm not just an individual by myself, but I'm an individual that's a part of a bigger family and a bigger community. So when we can do that, you will be surprised the amount of grace that God gives you to have a revelation of the blessing and the intentions He has for your family all along. You're going to begin to see things about your bloodline. You're going to be like, oh, wow, my parents, maybe they were a little idiosyncratic, but now I understand why, is because that's actually a very strong trait. It's a blessing. If they're OCD, wow, I didn't realize they were so annoying about being OCD and being a perfectionist and controlling, but I now realize that they have a knack for order. Guess who else has it? I do. Why don't I steward this gift? And as you get language for your blessing, you're going to be able to master it, and it's going to be able to manifest as a blessing because you've actually bridled it, right? You've taken it out of the grasp of the enemy, and you put it in the hands of God. And I'll go a step further, man. The even more beautiful thing is that when you can do that within yourself and break those curses, you could go back up the stream and be a blessing to your parents and your grandparents. Give them language for things. Bring them into a new reality of blessing. How awesome is that? That's ministry of reconciliation right there. To reconcile all things back to Christ, even your family. And so, look, generational curses, I know it's like a boogeyman. We make it out to be that way. And there's a lot of work to do, right? It's not a one and done thing. It's not just a seasonal thing. You might have to do it over the course of a decade, like I have. But if you're persistent and you're faithful, if you could detach yourself from the expectations you put on them, and you begin to see them as a human being, God can do powerful things in your life and in your family's life as well. And so be encouraged. There is already an original generational blessing that God has over your life. The curse is a manifestation of the perversion that came to that blessing. And so I just pray that God would restore you back to your design and your mandate, not as an individual, but as a collective within your bloodline. And that would bring life and that would bring purpose to you and to your family like never before. So this is a shorter episode. I think I got right to the point. I pray that it was helpful, that it gave language, and it gave you a different paradigm to look at your generational curse. Okay? So I say this every episode, but if you like this video, I don't care if you like it or not, but please subscribe to the channel so that we can stay connected and we could keep doing this because we're going to be talking about a lot more fun, spiritual, spooky, mystical topics in the future. So love you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.